Good morning, everybody. Minister. I'm going to talk to you today about the impact of accurate data on procurement planning. And it's quite an opportune moment for this discussion, actually, because already this morning we're hearing about all that's happening, both in terms of sustainability with the new tool, also e-tenders, and all of the green agenda that we need to focus on. And the theme today is about focusing on the future. So data-driven procurement planning, looking forward, is extremely important. Okay, so what is data-driven procurement? Well, it's about making the right decisions based on accurate procurement information. As a procurement professional, we have major national and global challenges, including sustainability, policy and directives from the EU and from government, value for money, the green agenda and digitisation. Data provides us the opportunity to implement informed change, and I think that is absolutely crucial. So I'm just going to turn and talk a little about education and what we're doing in education with regards to planning for the future. And I suppose to set the scene, really, I need to just mention that education is a very complex and diverse sector, okay? It's very large, with 4,500 organisations, primary schools, post-primary schools, universities, TUs, IoTs, ETBs, and HEIs, agencies and bodies. So there's huge diversity and huge requirements for procurement, but also for different types of procurement for those organisations and how they interact with the centralised model. What have we done in education to look forward to plan our requirements, okay? Well, it would be impossible for us to actually engage with 4,500 institutions. So what we've done is we've looked at the larger organisations, what we basically call our key customers. We've identified 33 of those, and we've engaged with them to develop a corporate procurement plan, which they've done. We've worked the template, and then they've implemented it. And on the basis of that CPP, that corporate procurement plan, they are committing themselves to engaging with the centralised model. Okay? As part of that, they produce a 3-year multi-annual procurement forecast of requirements. They send that to EPS. We cleanse that and put it into our database. So at this point, we have 4 years' worth of those plans, okay? We've gathered that information, which gives us 25,000 lines of data. Now, this tells us very clearly what people are procuring, how they're procuring it, what their contract position is, and how they're engaging with the model. So what we're really talking about is a cycle, okay? We have our forecasted demand, we create the aggregated forecast in the form of the multi-annual procurement plan. We then have a category sort, we do aggregation, analysis, we look at the existing suite of frameworks, and we identify areas where we need new frameworks or we need to change frameworks as they're rolled out into generation 2 or 3. So what we're really about, and that's a cycle that's taking place all the time, as you can see, but what we're really about is influencing category management strategy. And from our perspective, that's key, because by influencing the strategy, the frameworks that are developed will then meet our requirements, and that will allow us to increase our utilisation of central frameworks. So, the data-driven outputs, these are the outputs that we get from our forecasting model. Sourcing reports for the education sector. So these are reports that we share with our stakeholders, and it gives them a complete picture of what's available in terms of frameworks and how their procurement can be used against those frameworks. What's in and what's out of those frameworks, when they expire, and so on. We also do sector summary reports which set out how the sector is doing overall. Okay? We then have individual institution reports, and then we have performance charts showing actual spend for 2018 to 2021, which is a 3-year cycle we're looking at present. We also have tables showing forecasted spend for 2022 to 2023, and that allows our individual stakeholders then to benchmark against the performance of the sector. So they can look at how they're doing against the performance of the sector, and that is key. I wonder if you just excuse me while I get a glass of water here. I'm struggling a little bit, okay? Excuse me, and sorry about that. Okay, so what we're trying to do with our stakeholders is to develop an ecosystem of engagement. So this is not about a one-way communication. This is about two-way communication, and indeed horizontal communication and communication across sectors, etc. Okay, what we want is, as I say, an ecosystem that will allow us to consolidate our information, aggregate it, analyse it, develop our map requirements, and then to look at how best they can be addressed in terms of frameworks, central frameworks. But as well as that, we want to look at sustainability opportunities and green opportunities, and things like the tool that's being launched today are very important in terms of that. So within our ecosystem of engagement, we ask ourselves, what is the position in education at the moment? And this is a really important question, because as you can see from this, I have measured out where we've come from since 2018. Now, over there you can see that the spend in 2018 was in the 300 million area, okay, and that was across higher education. We then added the ETBs, and we significantly increased the spend, and I think up to around 569 million in 2019 and so on. You can see that it's going up. There was a change during COVID times and so on. But there's 2 points I really want to make here, okay? The first one is that the amount being purchased from central arrangements is around the 40%. There are incremental increases, but it's around 40%. We are compliant with procurement because the other 60% is being done by the individual institution. So we have a very strong and high level of procurement compliance. What we want to do now is to increase that 40%. We want to try and bring that forward. And what we want to do is to use this information that we've developed, this future information, to engage with sourcing teams across all the sectors, to look at how we're doing our procurement and to see how we can transfer that. And the best way we can do, we want to collaborate and we want to engage and we want to communicate. So, as part of that, I'm just setting out here that if you look at the categories that we buy, the top 7 categories make up 85% of our procurement spend. And I think that's really important and significant. And if we can focus our communication, our engagement across those 7 categories, then we can certainly make progress, I believe, in terms of rollout. My next slide is just a little bit of a sense check on where we're at, okay? Now, I've set out very clearly what we're achieving, 40% in terms of central procurement, 60% in terms of own procurement. We're also keeping a view on e-tenders to see what's happening. And last year, we had 669 tenders advertised on e-tenders. 623 of those, there was no central framework available, okay? There was 46, there was a framework available, and we obviously have spoken to the institutions as to why they were advertising a tender when there was a central framework in place. And there are many reasons for that, you know. But just focusing on the 623 for a minute, that really is, in my mind, an opportunity for us as sourcing professionals to dig into that and to look to put frameworks in place around those items, okay? And really, that's my message today, is to say, we're here in education, we're ready, we have our information, we want to engage with the sourcing teams across all the sectors to implement central arrangements that we can then utilise to a greater extent. Okay, looking forward then, because, you know, I've been speaking mostly about frameworks and central arrangements and improving that. But there are also other areas that we want to try to make improvement on, and that's around the infrastructure of the model itself, okay? So if I was to just say in terms of how we're going to do that, analysis, reporting, collaboration, and engagement, okay? And they're the critical pieces. So when we engage with our stakeholders, we also ask them about how the model is working and how it works for them. Things like the e-tenders, the new e-tenders, is going to be a critically important part of that. The central repository of frameworks so that people are able to engage with them. And also the self-serve are all initiatives that really do help in terms of people's being able to engage with the model. So just to talk about planning development priorities for 2023, and I'm nearly done, okay? So 2023 and on, we're going to have to look at e-tenders rollout and metrics and indicators, many other areas that are critical and important in terms of the model and progressing the development of the model. I'm not going to go into them in detail now. I will be here all day. I will really look forward to engaging with sourcing people and talking about how EPS can help you in terms of preparing and implementing frameworks, okay? I have my team here as well. But just to finish, I want to talk a little bit about the challenges for the future. And the CPO certainly mentioned and set out those challenges. And you know, the geopolitical situation, in 2016, no one could really have predicted what would happen with regards to Brexit. Within 2 years, we were into a global pandemic. All of those things put pressures on procurement professionals. You know, with regards to the pandemic, we had inflation, we had supply chain issues. Brexit created so many barriers to trade. And then the Ukraine war, right? Suddenly we have a real problem with regards to fossil fuels and availability of food. These are things that are unforeseen, and we have to react to them as procurement professionals. Sustainability. You know, you just turn on the television now and you hear almost immediately that the planet is warming quicker than it was expected, that there are, you know, all sorts of events happening. We have the COP taking place at the moment, and there's so much controversy about whether wealthy countries are playing their part in terms of finance and investment. All of these things are creating real challenges for us as procurement professionals, but also opportunities, and I think we need to be very conscious of that. In education, we have a specific area which is around demographics, because we're in a situation now where people are actually retiring and going into education. We are also dealing with young people who use social media and are really, they don't fill out application forms or anything like that anymore. So we have to react to that. And digitisation is going to be a key tool in terms of that. You know, the government isn't going to be able to continually put more resources in place for us. We are going to have to use efficiency and digitisation to engage with suppliers and to engage with our stakeholders and allow a lot of the work that was previously done to be done online, etc. Okay? And added to that, then, there are possible unforeseen issues that could arise at any time. And the key piece for us as procurement professionals is to be agile. We have got to be agile. We have got to be able to adapt and to take on new challenges. Okay? And I really believe strongly that having data and accurate data and future data, looking forward, not retrospective data, but future data, is key to making the right decisions across all of those areas, across sustainability, across digitisation, across having the right frameworks in place for people to use. Thank you.
Now, thanks a million, Philip. I'm going to invite you to take a seat there because we have about 10 minutes for questions. So hopefully we will get out. Actually, they've been coming in while you were speaking, so people are obviously engaged with the process. So let me start by looking at some of the online ones. For everybody in the room, we have a couple of roving microphones. And if you do have a question to ask, just pop up your hand. No fancy apps here, and we'll try and get around to it. The only thing I would say is if you have something to say, make sure there's a question mark on the end of it. All right. Okay, now, Philip, let me start with online. Philip showed a slide, says one contributor, that said education is using central arrangements for 40% and 60% from their own procurement. And they want to know, is that what success looks like? Is that a success for you?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I believe that in the initial stages of what we're trying to achieve, 40% is the real success, because we have our major stakeholders engaged with the process and interested in using central arrangements. And I think that's a crucial first step. In order to bring that from 40% up, I think we really need to have category strategies in place. We need to be able to see what the portfolio managers, who are the experts in their area, believe that they can do in terms of coverage and in terms of percentage of spend that could be under coverage. And I think really that's going to be crucial in terms then of setting targets for us all to achieve over the next few years.
Okay, so a lot done, more to do.
Exactly.
Is that the wrap on that? All right. Anybody in the room have a question for Philip that they'd like to ask? And we'll get, don't be shy. Okay, well, let me go back online then, because we have more here. Philip mentioned influencing category strategy, and our listener wants to know what maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, I've actually just mentioned category strategy in terms of increasing percentages. And I also think that category strategy has a huge role to play in terms of setting out what are the procurement solutions that we're going to put in place. And I believe, again, that the experts are the portfolio managers and their teams. And they should, in my mind, be able to set out what are the solutions that they're going to put in place. And then by taking input, obviously, as well from stakeholders in developing those strategies, but then socialising the strategies so that people are aware what they are. And then as each framework or as each DPS or each solution is worked on to be put in place, people have an understanding of what it's going to do in terms of achievement. And I think that's really important. But I want to make one point here, because I've put a lot now on portfolio managers, and that's not, completely fair, because they're very busy people and they're trying to cope with a lot of issues and a huge public sector. So I think there has to be, there's an onus on the sectors to step forward in terms of category councils and providing representation on those category councils, providing input and expertise in the development of sourcing teams, and bringing forward the model in terms of what they want. Because at the end of the day, if we can't do this in isolation. This has got to be about engagement. It's got to be about that ecosystem that I mentioned, where everybody's involved, okay? And everybody's got to be a stakeholder and feel that they're getting something from this. So, for the sourcing teams, it's really important, if they are to work with category councils, that they feel they're getting something out of it in terms of developing their future solutions. And meanwhile, the stakeholders have got to feel that they're going to get something out of it in terms of their needs, in terms of value for money, and in terms of compliance. Okay, so, what I'm really saying is that the onus is on everybody, not on any one particular function. And I think we need to bring that to bear on our development.
So a fully collaborative experience.
Very
Everybody pitches in. Yes. All right. Okay, well then, do we have a question here? Sir. We have a question down here now. The lights are very bright up here. I feel like breaking into song. Hello, how are you? What can Philip help you with?
Hi, Philip. Stuart Roach here, anyway. You put up a slide there that showed that I think it was 46 frameworks for the procurement that you were trying to achieve. I don't know if I've picked it up correctly or not. I know the OGP spend a lot of time developing frameworks for all sorts of procurement, but you had quite a substantial number of procurement areas where there didn't appear to be frameworks. Are we talking about material amounts of money in relation to the non-framework procurement in the education sector?
Okay, that's a very good question, and I suppose really that reinforces what I'm saying, because quality data is the key to making progress and to planning. we know that there were 623 odd tenders advertised last year on e-tenders. But we know the categories that they were advertised, but we don't know the value of each one. And that's something that we're now looking forward to working on and developing and getting an understanding of in 2023. And we will be doing that through our multi-annual procurement planning requirements. We'll be asking our stakeholders to give us a bit more information, okay? So it just reinforces that need for quality data, because while I recognise that there's a substantial amount of procurement happening outside the model and a substantial number of tenders being put in place outside the model, we're not in a position to go to the OGP or any of the sourcing teams and say, well, we need a framework for this or that or the other regarding those 600. So we need to gather that information, and we will be doing that. And we'll be doing that through the map. We'll be digging into the 60%, asking our stakeholders to give us more information around that, what those items are. So then we're able to bring a very concise piece of information to the sourcing teams. But I would also just like to say, just to add, that I really do invite the sourcing teams to engage with us and to define what information they want from us when they're preparing to run a framework. We have the information. We've built the profile in education. We can supply the expertise and the information and the people to develop future frameworks, and we would be delighted to do so.
Thank you, and thank you, questioner. And actually, you might have answered then the next question, which is the category councils are only working in some areas, says this communicator. Should we try another way of engaging the sourcing professionals who know what is required? And I think that speaks to what you were saying. Yeah, and I may be repeating myself a little bit, but I think it's actually crucial and it's worth saying. We can't have an expectation within the model that the sourcing people alone can run the category councils and make them work, okay? That's just not credible. The sectors have to get involved as well and have to be prepared to provide people to sit on category councils, to gather information and provide that information to category councils if that's to work. And I would just like to say as well that in my mind, what's even more important in some respects than category councils is category strategies, because category councils are about developing category strategies, okay? And developing a category strategy is going to set out everything about that category, what the level of coverage is, what the frameworks would look like, what the percentages would be, okay? So I think two things I'm really saying there is we can't just leave it to the sourcing teams to develop and to run the category councils. That's got to be done by everybody, okay? And category councils aren't just about category council meetings, they're about developing category strategy so that we're able to set out for the future what we intend to achieve. Okay, Philip Gurnett, thank you so much for being with us today with your lived experience in this whole area, which is obviously invaluable to everybody here today.